Welcome back to App Stories. Today's episode is brought to you by Paste and Crouton. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Viticci. Hi, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm having a lovely afternoon. It's starting to get warm and sunny here in North Carolina. I actually see flowers 2 or 3 months before they would bloom in the old days in Chicago. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. But yeah, but I've not been outside, Federico. I've been sitting inside with the shades drawn so my neighbors can't see me using the Vision Pro in my office.
You've just been hanging around in virtual Yosemite and virtual Joshua Tree.
Exactly.
You've been outside. You've been outside, just virtually outside. You know,
that's true. That's true. I've been all over the world, actually. You know, although I guess most of these locations are all in the U.S. Maybe do you think when the Vision Pro comes to Europe, they'll have some, shots of the Alps or maybe the Italian countryside?
Put me in the center of the Colosseum. That's where I want to be, with the gladiators and the lions and everything. Put me there.
That'll be your immersive video. Well, you'll be a gladiator on a chariot and fighting with someone to the death,
with the emperor doing the thumbs up or thumbs down, whether I should die or not. So today we're going to talk about visionOS. We talked about the Vision Pro hardware and our DHL shipping adventures last week. This week we're talking about the software. You may have noticed we've been doing a bunch of app reviews on Mac Stories and roundups. More are coming because we have, at this point, it's a brand new Apple platform and we have a virtually infinite supply of new apps to write about. But of course, we're still going to keep the balance of other content on Mac Stories with Nilean and Jonathan and the two of us. But it's a brand new Apple product. It's a weird and original and fascinating Apple product. So that's why we've been focusing on those app reviews on the site.
Right. Well, and the other thing I think too, Federico, is I think it's important to note that a lot of this visionOS stuff is going to carry over to other platforms. I think a lot of what we're seeing and what we're going to talk about today, we're going to see at WWDC on other platforms. So even if you are not, if the Vision Pro doesn't interest you from the standpoint of actually purchasing one yourself, I think that there is some merit to kind of paying attention to what's going on if you're interested in apps and where maybe things like iPadOS and macOS are heading.
Yeah. So visionOS, I don't really know where to start to talk about it because it's it's a whole new platform. So you can start from any corner of the platform and talk about it. But I think the first thing we should talk about is just how does it feel when you're using visionOS? And specifically, I want to talk about eye tracking and hand recognition. I remember from my original WWDC demo that I was just astounded by the quality of the pass-through. I thought that eye tracking worked like magic, and I immediately understood how I was supposed to use the new gestures of visionOS. And I'm here to say that 2 out of those 3 things held up for me when using the Vision Pro, and I am still kind of disappointed by one. The one aspect I am disappointed by is the pass-through. I don't know if it was the excitement of the demo. I don't know if maybe Apple turned down the quality a little bit after, with the shipping version of the Vision Pro.
You're also probably in an area that had perfect lighting too.
It was a very nicely lit briefing room at Apple Park. That's also true. But I'm also I believe in the conspiracy theory that the pass-through quality was higher at WWDC and it's slightly lower now. But all this to say, you can absolutely tell that you're looking at a video feed reconstruction of reality.
The colors are all a little bit washed out, really.
Colors are washed out, and you always get that sort of fuzziness in the image, right? You can tell that there's pixels being moved. But the one thing, even though I am disappointed by the quality of pass-through, I still believe that default experience of the Vision Pro in visionOS is absolutely the right decision because it keeps you grounded in reality and allows you to start putting together these windows in front of you. And I like that I don't like the quality of the video, but I like the idea so much that I've realized that I find myself using pass-through mode much more often than environments, because I environments are cool and atmospheric, and that they have a really strong vibe. Like Yosemite National Park is a vibe to work in,
Yep, yep.
but I like to be able to check what's going on around me.
I do too. I'm kind of the same way. And I actually had that. It was interesting to me that I unpackaged my Vision Pro on a weekend and Jennifer was home. And so I immediately felt, when I tried out the environments, I felt, oh, I didn't really like this, because I felt really secluded. Even though I was sitting on the couch with her, I felt very isolated from her. And I didn't like that. And so I almost never use the environments when she's home. Like if we're together, if I'm in my office, I will. But when we're together, I don't really use them that much, unless I'm like maybe watching TV or something like that, and she's doing something else. But I like them a lot, but I know what you mean by wanting to know what's going on around you, even if it's just little stuff. And so I use the environments, especially when I'm writing. I guess I will do that, because it's kind of a nice, I don't know, it's like, a nice focused work mode. But beyond that, I typically just work a lot of times at my desk without without an environment going, with my Mac screen right in front of my actual Mac screen sometimes.
Mm. Yeah. And whether you have dogs or you have kids and you want to be able
Right.
to check what they're doing, what's also a nice compromise, I think, sometimes, is just to put on an environment and dial it in so that it feels like 40 or 50% of your field of view.
Mm-hmm.
And that also, I think it's a nice trade-off. So the other two aspects that I mentioned, the eye tracking and the hand recognition.
Right.
So the eye tracking, it does feel still to me like magic.
It really does.
The fact that I can look at something and that signals immediately to the system my intention, that I'm looking at that object, I'm looking at that button, and I want to click it, it feels like magic. There is the occasional issue where visionOS doesn't quite recognize your glance, and so it happens to me on a regular basis that maybe I'm looking at the first item in a sidebar, but visionOS thinks that I'm looking at the second one. And
Right.
that is usually fixed by it sounds silly, but like sometimes like raising my eyebrows and look like
Or looking away, maybe.
or looking away and then looking again, or like really making an effort to look up. That usually fixes it. But it's the sort of issue that is to be expected, I think, in version 1.0 of a brand new OS. But it's still what I think Apple has done so well is the you can see applied here the many years that Apple spent building selection systems on iPadOS and tvOS specifically. The eye tracking and sort of where your gaze lands on in the visionOS UI is very reminiscent of the tvOS focus engine. So when you're selecting stuff on tvOS with the Siri remote, and it sort of highlights the icon or the UI element that you want to select, or on iPadOS, obviously the pointer. So the system pointer and every app that supports hover effects, which Apple, they like to reuse their previous technologies. And here in visionOS, it's sort of the culmination of all those technologies. It's not an accident, I think, that iPadOS was chosen as the foundation of visionOS, because all those iPad apps that support the pointer and support hover effect and support Apple Pencil hover, for example, they work out of the box with eye tracking. So I really like eye tracking as an interaction paradigm for an operating system, to the point where it kind of breaks my brain, because now I find myself looking at my studio display, for example, and looking at a button in Obsidian and wondering, hey, why doesn't that get highlighted in front of me?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's interesting. I think it feels magical too. It's really, last night I was looking at a list of items and I found myself pointing at them in the air and moving my hand down. And as my finger went down, the selection went down. And I thought, oh, how is it doing that? And then I realized, oh, it's tracking my eyes because my eyes are following my finger. It wasn't tracking my finger, it was tracking
But
my
it
eyes.
also does track your fingers, though, and that's the part about the hand recognition. I don't recommend it because the interaction kind of sucks. But you can, quote unquote, touch
Yeah,
visionOS UI elements. Like you can tap buttons with your fingers,
true.
but it's such a horrible experience because it's like you're poking with your finger and you're sort of it's like walking through a ghost or something.
Yeah, and the problem is too that I think the default distance is like maybe a meter or a little bit more than that
Yeah,
away from you. So most of the time, the UI is too far for you to reach anyhow.
yeah, but it does feel like magic in a way that and that Vision OS is sort of it's a difficult OS to talk about because there are so many elements that work together, and so you start talking about one thing, but you need to mention something else.
Right.
The image quality of the displays is just incredible. Like I mean, you do have a 4K display per eye, and so the pixel density and just the how text can be crisp and the UI, the default glass material that Vision OS is using to reflect lights, the light around you and the colors around you, and sort of how that light bounces off the glass material of the Vision
Hmm.
OS UI. It and when you're looking at it up close, so when you bring a window, for example, very close to your face and you look at it, it's so high definition and high
Oh yeah.
resolution. It's wild to me.
Yeah, no, and the thing is that they do a glass effect without it feeling like you're getting the negative parts of a glass effect, which are
Yes.
reflections on the front of the screen. Because one of the first things I noticed when I tried the Mac mirroring of the display was, oh my gosh, this is the best Mac display I've ever seen because there's absolutely no reflection of the rest of the room in the display. And unless you're in the complete dark, even if you're in the complete dark, you're going to get some sort of reflection off your screen. And it actually makes a big difference not having that. And obviously, with these virtual displays, you don't have that in any of the UI elements, whether it's the Mac mirroring or one of the Vision OS native apps. I wanted to mention a couple of things about the eye tracking before we move on, though, which is first of all, I wondered whether it was going to make my eyes tired, and I haven't really noticed that. It hasn't really been a problem for me. I suppose that people's reactions to that could be different, but it hasn't really caused much eye fatigue for me. And the
Yeah,
other
me
thing,
neither.
yeah, and the other thing is, I think it, I guess two things. One is when I'm on the home screen and all the icons are there, I do find it a little annoying when the selection is moving from one thing to the other all the time because I don't know, maybe I'm just looking around too much, but it's like maybe I'm looking around the room behind the icons and I'm hearing the little pop 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 as my gaze changes and
Mm.
it's doing that. But I did find that it's really not as bad to type as I expected. I thought from everything I read that the typing was going to be horrible. And while I'm not going to type an article
Hmm.
using my fingers and my eyes, it's really not that bad to do. And with a combination of the gesture typing and using your voice, using Siri or just the dictation, it works quite well, even if you don't have a keyboard right by you, especially if all you're doing is like searching for a TV show or a movie or trying to start something like that. It's pretty easy to deal with that sort of thing. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Paste. Paste is your indispensable clipboard manager for Mac and iOS. It's been designed from the ground up with the Apple Power user in mind who wants to elevate their workflows to new heights of organization and ease. It's an app that's absolutely packed with terrific features. It's got an unlimited clipboard history, which ensures that nothing ever gets lost, keeping track of everything you copy on your devices. It also uses intelligent search, allowing you to quickly find any item that you've copied in the past with ease and precision. Plus, there are customizable rules. You just specify which apps Paste should track, giving you full control over your data. And it features really easy to use content previews. You can browse your clipboard history with large, clear previews for easy identification and fast retrieval. You can even edit something that's in your clipboard history before you use it. Preview it, make your edits, copy, and paste it right into an application. For those things that you need to use frequently, there's quick access too. And everything is stored securely with iCloud storage using industry standard security technologies. You can personalize and customize your experience too with custom rules and shortcuts. And if you're a real power user, paste multiple items in a specific order. It's a really powerful tool. Plus, plain text formatting allows you to strip out unwanted formatting from text for a cleaner, more consistent look. And of course, Shortcuts is integrated right into the app, allowing you to automate your routine tasks and boost your efficiency. Just go to pasteapp.io today to learn more and download this fantastic app for both the Mac and your iOS devices. Again, that's pasteapp.io. Our thanks to Paste for their support of the show.
Did you see that if you look at the dictation icon and you look at it for a couple of seconds, sort of hold your eyes on it, it enables dictation mode.
Yep.
It's what's the equivalent, that is the eye tracking equivalent of a tap and hold. It's like a look and hold or something, which is an interesting gesture that I think we're gonna see more and more of this. That is effectively, so if you think of, I'm going to say something weird, but if you think about it, those are like modifiers for your eyes. So typically you have keyboard modifiers or gesture modifiers. Like on iOS, you have the tap and hold, or you have the tap, hold, and drag. And with the keyboard, you have command and something else, or command, option, and something else. Here, with the different ways you look at something on visionOS, and I think this is going to be a theme of future versions of visionOS, modifiers for your eye tracking. So whether you look at something and you pause for a couple of seconds, or maybe they should do, I don't know, roll your eyes to undo. Like, I can imagine that we're gonna see some experiments on this front going forward. Like, what are the ways you can carry over some legacy interactions, like shaking to undo, or dragging something, or selecting something, opening a contextual menu without using your hands, just by using your eyes. That is a topic that fascinates me right now, and we already have one example, which is look and hold as you look at the dictation icon.
Yeah, that is interesting, because there's pinch and hold too, which is what you can do to get kind of the right click context
You can do that. You can do the double tap with your fingers. You can do, have you tried zoom with two hands? So you can sort of pinch with two hands to zoom in and zoom out on a photo or something. The visionOS UI, this is something that I am studying at the moment. I'm going to let you in on it's not a surprise. It's just a very little secret, John. I've started using DevonThink again as a place to archive all the Apple documentation that I can find for the human interface guidelines, the Vision Pro guide, and all those kind of materials that I want to study and highlight. I did the same thing 14 years ago with iOS on the iPad, iOS 3.2, which launched on the iPad. I studied the entire human interface guidelines. That's what I'm doing at the moment for visionOS. Something that really strikes me about visionOS, the sense of depth and how well Apple managed, again, I'm going to say this again, to keep you grounded in reality. So the fact that these windows, when you open an app window on visionOS and the window projects a shadow in your physical world, and even if you are in an environment, it projects a shadow in your environment, that is incredible, in my opinion. That sense of physicality, of if you think of a window as an object, it really breaks my brain in a good way, because it makes me feel like, oh yeah, I'm looking at, there's this object in my living room. The consequence of that for me has been that, so let's say that I'm working on the couch with a Vision Pro and I got a bunch of windows scattered around the living room, and I need to walk across to the kitchen and grab a water or something. I feel so weird whenever I need to walk through an app.
I do too.
It makes me and I have found myself intentionally avoiding walking through a window because it makes me feel weird.
I put an Apple Music player right in the doorway of my office this morning, and I had to get up and use the bathroom. I left the room and I had to walk right through it. And it is a little weird to walk through it because you can't see the other side until you actually get through it.
Yeah, and speaking of that, that was gonna be my other item. So this sense of depth. So when you're looking at buttons, for example, as you look at them and the button gets selected, it also gets raised on the z-axis a little. So
Right,
you
right.
can also see this on the home screen, for example. When you look at icons, they gain a sense of depth, like a 3D effect as you look
Yep.
at them, which is a very nice way to indicate selection, in my opinion. But the z-axis that Apple is using here also applies to the whole window, right? So you can place one window beneath another window, right? So you can
Hmm.
on the z-axis you can stack windows beneath each other, and the and this is the interaction that I think is a little weird at the moment, because there's effectively no window management on visionOS. There is window management in the sense that you got to do all the
You
management.
got to drag it
You
around. Yeah.
are you are the window manager in
Right.
visionOS right now. But so let's say that you have Safari and then you have Mail, and then you have Ivory. How do you access Ivory that's further in the back? So in theory, and this works for me most of the time, you should be able with your eyes to look intentionally at the third window that's behind all the other windows, and visionOS will understand, oh, you're looking at that one, let me bring it to the foreground. And that
Right, right.
works, but it works most of the time. And so I find myself trying to arrange windows in a way that I don't have to do that sort of squinting to tell visionOS, look, I'm looking at that window behind the other window. But
Right.
I think this is another area where obviously Apple needs to iterate and refine, because
Yeah, there's some problems too, because I mean, first of all, those ones that are behind, they kind of fade out in a way, which
yes,
makes them a little hard to see. And so it is a little hard, I think, sometimes to know exactly where to look. And if they are really covered up, it can be basically impossible to get to that window. And that's one of the things that I find difficult with window management, is that you can truly lose windows in visionOS. I mean,
yes,
right? There are two things going on. One is you can just, something gets behind something else. And this happens a lot with apps that spawn multiple windows, and some of them are small and some of them are big, depending on where they get placed in the field of view, like
yep.
the depth map of it all. They just kind of disappear, and then you realize, oh, it's hidden behind something. But other times windows just seem to go away, and I don't know what happened to them. And this also relates to an experiment I did, which is if you pinch and hold on the close button, you get two options, one of which is hide all the other windows. You know what happens when you hide them?
They're
They
gone.
get hidden. They're gone. But you know how you get them back? As far as I can tell, you can't.
You got to force quit. Today I closed the window
Yes.
for an app that I
Yes.
was testing, and whenever I reopened the app from the home screen, the window was gone. I had to force quit, which, by the way, Apple built this. I think they built an incredible force quit menu in a way
Yep.
that they're never gonna build this kind of force quit menu on any other platform, because they don't want people on their iPhones to force quit apps. You need to press and hold the digital crown and the top button until you get this dedicated force quit menu. And so if your windows are gone and you open an app from the home screen and the window still doesn't come back, the only way I've found to re-enter a normal window mode for an app is to force quit it and reopen it again.
Yep.
But honestly, visionOS needs some kind of window manager. It could be Stage Manager. They could rethink Stage Manager as a way to make sure that a tiny portion of a window is always visible, which is exactly what Stage Manager does on the Mac and iPadOS, but also as a way to group windows together in little clusters, right, that you can re-access and with one click. They could also use Expose or Mission Control or these other window managers that they have. But knowing Apple, you know what they're going to do? They're going to build a new window manager for visionOS. Because if there's one thing that Apple can help itself doing, is building new window management UIs from scratch. And so I am very confident that they are going to build yet again a brand new window manager UI and paradigm for visionOS.
Well, one of the complicating things I think there is that, let's say I leave a Safari window open on the second floor of my house and I'm sitting down on the first floor. When you switch to Safari, how does that work? Do you teleport it to where you happen to be sitting?
You gotta walk. You gotta walk.
Or how do you do it? I mean, that's there are some complicating things here. Like, you can't just do like a command tab UI. It doesn't work that way. If they're spread into different rooms.
They should add a new fitness category: steps taken to reach visionOS
yes,
Windows.
They should. The thing is, though, I don't know about you. I don't find myself like leaving apps around my house. I for the most part, when I finish up using the Vision Pro, I close things down.
Yeah. I do it, but very sparingly for very specific things, like cooking with a timer on the stove, like a digital timer. I have done that. I do that. It's very nice and makes it feel like the future. You're looking at your stove and you see the timer for your pasta. That is an incredible feature. But I do it. It's sort of gimmicky, and it's very specific to a particular task, I think. Like, why should I leave things in my office if I want to work from the couch?
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Crouton. Crouton is a simple recipe organizer and meal planner. It's designed to easily save recipes from websites and import from cookbooks just by taking a photo. When you're ready to plan your meals, it's really quick and simple to do from your saved recipes, or you can let Crouton do the heavy lifting with a randomly generated plan. Crouton also integrates with reminders, allowing you to create shopping lists from your recipes with ease so that when you walk out the door, you're ready with the list of things you need from the grocery. The app's step-by-step mode makes cooking simple, and with a unique hands-free mode, wink left and right to move through steps. It's really pretty cool when you try it. Crouton also has quick actions for timers, ingredients, and temperatures. Just tap a timer to start it, a temperature to get the conversion, and any ingredients to see the amount. No need to jump back and forth between ingredients lists and steps. Crouton's now on visionOS too. You can meal plan using the shuffle deck, swiping left and right through your recipes to discover old favorites, and then drag and drop them onto days of the week to get your plan ready in no time flat. Experience the future of cooking by placing timers around your physical space too, and tap on measurements to visualize them on your countertop. You may have seen Crouton in action in Joanna Stern's video for the Wall Street Journal when she reviewed the Vision Pro. There weren't a lot of third-party apps in that video, and I think maybe Crouton was the only one, but it was there and it looked fantastic. Discover new recipes from your favorite websites directly in Crouton too. It's really the app that can do it all. From saving recipes to meal planning to cooking in the kitchen, Crouton has you covered. It's a home for your recipes from wherever you find them. Just go to crouton.app to learn more and download Crouton today. Again, that URL is crouton.app. Our thanks to Crouton for their support of the show.
Speaking of, the one thing that the Vision Pro is doing to me is making me use my desk less and allowing me to work from more comfortable spots in my house. Yep. As a result, as you can imagine, I'm also using macOS a lot more. And by a lot more, I mean, I haven't touched my iPad Pro in 2 weeks. Like, it's literally powered off and in a drawer. I haven't used it at all. Because, I mean, I am using an iPad Pro. It's just called Vision Pro now.
True.
If you think about it.
Well, and that's one thing I wanted to talk to you about is like, what does the Vision Pro mean for the iPad? I don't think it means a lot in the short term because, I mean, let's face it, the Vision Pro costs like more than 3 times the amount of a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, right? So at least the low end. So I don't think that the iPad's going anywhere, but it does feel in a lot of ways like the ultimate incarnation of the iPad. Now, we'll talk in future episodes more about third-party apps. I think I've found that the apps so far, I've been very pleasantly surprised by the wealth of apps that are already available. It's a little thin in some categories. I think that will come. I mean, I think like a lot of new platforms, we're seeing more simpler utilities, a lot of those. We're seeing fewer of the more complex apps, but that's not entirely true. There are quite a few things you can use, but but I do feel like this could, especially with the way that it interacts with the Mac, because I've always been more of a Mac person to begin with. This to me is like, if I had had this kind of Mac connection to the iPad, I probably would have been a bigger iPad user all along, because I would have that fallback of familiarity and apps that weren't available on the iPad. Just like right now, the Vision Pro doesn't have everything. Or maybe, for instance, I can use Obsidian, for instance, on the Vision Pro, but it's not great. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just open up my Mac and use it with the Vision Pro and use Obsidian on the Mac because it's much better there. So there's just more options, I think, because of that integration, which has really made the Vision Pro more of a productivity device than I even expected.
Yeah, I think it's a very fair question to ask. Like, as an Apple customer who has a Vision Pro, why do I need an iPad Pro right now? And that is, to me, this is going to be the question going into a possible March event for new Macs and new iPad Pros and a new iPad Air. If I have a Vision Pro, why do I need an iPad? And the answer is you probably don't. Like, it's the Apple likes to target different price umbrellas, so to speak. And there's the customer who's fine with an iPad Pro, and there's the customer who wants to go for a more expensive purchase with the Vision Pro. And it's not like, well, I mean, Apple sure wants you to buy every Apple device, but realistically, most people don't, right? Most people make an informed decision, and they're like, well, do I want to use a Mac? Do I want to use an iPad or a Vision Pro? Do I want a desktop Mac? Or a laptop? But the one thing I keep thinking about is I would use an iPad Pro if I could do a virtual iPad display mode with visionOS. So all things being equal, let's say that right now with the Vision Pro, Apple shipped it and said, you can use virtual Mac display mode, or you can use virtual iPad display mode, so that you can have a giant iPad display in front of you when you want to do things that visionOS apps cannot do. I would totally go for an iPad virtual display mode. But don't you
already kind of have that with compatibility?
Well, sort of, but you still don't have a proper window manager, and
that's true.
You don't have USB access, you don't have Ethernet access, like all the things that I like to have in a Mac. A trackpad, a keyboard, right? And so if I could make a decision between, like, okay, you can use a MacBook Air or you can use an iPad Pro with the Vision Pro, choose. I would choose the iPad Pro, but right now I feel like I am forced to use a Mac because it's the one escape hatch that I have from visionOS, right? So that to me is the question that needs answering, and there probably won't be an answer, which is why I keep saying this on podcasts. I am so curious to see how Apple is going to pitch this OLED iPad Pros, like beyond the display. We'll see. But I know that right now, because I spend most of my days at home by myself working, my main computer is going to be the Vision Pro. That's how I've been working. And the effect of that switch has been, I'm using my MacBook Air more, because it's nice to have a virtual Mac display, and it's nicer to have a Mac keyboard and trackpad. Go listen to the Plus segment of App Stories Plus for more context on this. It's nicer, and but yeah, at the same time, I'm using the MacBook Air more. And as a result, when I'm lying in bed and like I just want to read a couple of articles or watch a YouTube video for 10 minutes before I fall asleep, I'm using an iPad mini instead.
Yeah.
So
no, I hear you. No, it's done similar things for me. I mean, I have found myself sitting at my desk sitting on the couch in my office quite a bit for the first time ever since I've had this office, using the iPad Pro less. And my mini has been my mainstay because the mini for me, the iPad mini has always been my bedtime reading machine or watching YouTube or whatever it happens to be. I'll use it for an hour or two in the evening, and that hasn't really changed very much for me. But I am using a laptop a lot more too, which is for me it used to be that I would use my desktop Mac when I was at home, and the laptop was mostly for when I left the house, or if it was like the evening and I had a few things to do and I wanted to bring it upstairs and not be sitting in my office. So, but now I'm using the laptop a lot more because it's a much better companion to visionOS than my desktop. Because one thing I have noticed is the distance that mirroring works is relatively short, and even across the room in my office, which is only like, I don't know, 3 meters or something like that. I've noticed that if I'm sitting on the couch and trying to mirror the desktop Mac on my desk, that it disconnects more than if I'm sitting at the desk. So that's a one reason to use a laptop. Federico, before we go today, I think maybe we should hit some of the misses here. We've talked about a few of them, but I think there are some misses on 1.0 that we should talk about, because there are, I've found myself rebooting my visionOS, my Vision Pro, quite a bit. Maybe that's because we're pushing it very hard with things like screenshots. There's definitely that. I'm not going to fault third-party developers for bugs at this point, because most of them haven't had the hardware, and sometimes it shows, but it's totally understandable. But I do think that, for instance, when you're in the environments, if you haven't turned up all the way, it is a bit of a miss that you can't see your keyboard and your hands. That you really, right? I mean, I will turn it up to 100%, but really only if I'm like watching TV or something like that, not if I'm typing, because you can't see your hands or the trackpad, which is no good.
They should do what you can do with the Meta Quest, which is you can select a portion of your surroundings and say, exclude this from the virtual environment. So let me just effectively pass through this rectangle, which is my keyboard. And that was one of my favorite aspects of the Meta Quest.
Yeah, that's a really nice feature.
Possibly the only one.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I have a Meta Quest 2 sitting in the closet, and my X-Real Air glasses are sitting on the shelf. The other thing I want to mention, though, are a lot of the missing system apps.
Oh, yeah.
That I was surprised at how many there are. Like, for instance, given how much attention Apple has paid to the animations in the weather app, I really would have thought that one of the marquee apps on launch would have been a weather app where it's snowing in your living room if it's snowing outside, or snow's predicted, something like that. I don't know, but there's no weather app.
Yeah, the one thing I wanna close the show by saying is the big miss for me right now is the lack of, besides window management, but it's the lack of window persistence.
True.
I would love to be able to map my living room or my office and say, when I'm here, and let me issue a Siri command or run a shortcut or whatever, rearrange my virtual workspace like this, with these windows and these apps. Let me build, let me create this little sort of Animal Crossing-like experience where I can decorate my virtual workspace with a preset of windows and apps. And that to me right now is the biggest limitation of visionOS, that every time you put it on, you need to carefully reconstruct how you like to get work done, and put Safari over here and my task manager over there and Mastodon on the other side, and having to redo that from scratch every single time is a bit tiring, especially considering how any other on Mac OS, they have done window persistence for a long time. They have window persistence in Stage Manager for the iPad. They can remember window positions. And
well, you know what I would say before we move on? I would say there are two parts to this. One is persistence between reboots, which is just remembering where you left things. But the other is allowing you to use shortcuts to create sets, like workspaces that you can put up in with the click of one button, which seems like a perfect thing for shortcuts to me.
I agree. And lastly, I wanted to leave you with this question to ponder for the next few episodes. What's the role of widgets gonna be on this platform? Because right now in visionOS, we don't have widgets. And it's strange because Apple loves widgets and they have put widgets everywhere. So tvOS and visionOS at the moment are the only Apple OSs without widgets. And I really think there's a lot of potential here for bringing in widgets as a way to I want to say maybe like, imagine if in a future version of visionOS, a widget is essentially the minimized version of an app. Right now, you don't minimize apps in visionOS. You just open them and close them. It's sort of like an iPad. But what if, and on the Mac, of course, you have widgets on the desktop, but then you minimize Windows into a dock, and the dock has icons. And what I'm thinking, I guess, is a mixture of the iPad and the Mac. This is something that also Jason Snell sort of hinted on Upgrade with Mike. And I really liked that idea that I wanted to expand upon it a little bit. I am intrigued by a potential future in which you have a full window and a mini window, and the mini window is actually a widget, so that you have a way to keep an eye on what's going on inside of an app. And when you click the widget, it spawns a full window around you. That, to me, could be a way for Apple to bring widgets to visionOS in a way that combines the best aspects of widgets as a glanceable piece of UI and also an interactive piece of UI, but also as a way to declutter your physical or virtual workspace and basically hide windows in a tiny element that, however, is still accessible.
That's a really interesting idea. I like it. I mean, I feel like we're partway there in the sense that I was just writing about note-taking apps on visionOS. And, a lot of those note-taking apps, you can shrink those windows down to a really small size, a really small square, and you've got just a piece of the text there that you've added to the note. But I could see doing that and making them more like widgets and making them even smaller and having a way for them to persist, like we were talking about before, in places, so that you have your grocery list that's sitting next to your refrigerator, or I don't know, whatever it happens to be, something where you can jot down new things as you realize you don't have them. But you could have others that were more interactive and live, whether it's like countdown timers or, data being delivered from the internet. Could be really cool. Yep. I love it. All right, Federico, good conversation. We will be back in next week. In the meantime, go on over to macstories.net to find the two of us. I want to thank our sponsors for this episode too. That's Paste and Crouton. You can find us on Mastodon. Just go to vitici.macstories.net or johnvorhees.macstories.net to follow us there. We're on Twitter and Instagram, where Federico is at Vitici. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees, JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.